Can we let go of the genetic expression of 40 generations of trauma that's pounding on your doors right now, creating the cacophony of chaos in your mind, heart, and soul? Can you let go of that for a moment and just give the space that Eva was encouraging us to? Take the breath. And now feel your water. Feel this deep ocean of memory. It is a saline solution. It is a literal ocean inside of you that remembers the original imprint of our birthright. What does it actually mean to be human? To be human is to be the greatest imagination of Mother Nature, a vessel that will contain more biodiversity and interconnected intelligence than any other species will hold. The genomic sequencing of the human now shows that we hold more biodiversity than any other mammal. The colon of the human is uniquely designed anatomically to hold more of Mother Earth than any other container she's designed so far. And so to be a human is to hold Mother Earth in an interconnected environment where your wisdom and your truth comes pouring out as the trees speak through you, as the rivers speak through you, as the oceans speak through you. Remember from your water, not from your genetics. Remember from your water, not from your ancestors, and find out in that water that your ancestors are not some past thing, they are present, right? There is only time in the human construct of separation from nature. So let's let go of the trauma, let's let go of time, allow our ancestors to become present, and have an energetic upgrade to our memory through the water of the original human design.
This is the Gifts of Trauma podcast, stories of transformation and healing through compassionate inquiry. Welcome to the Gifts of Trauma podcast by Compassionate Inquiry. I'm Rosemary Davies-Janes, and today, along with my co-host, Jem Rothbard, we're wrapping up the Relating series with two very special guests, Eva Dalak, who we spoke with last fall, and Zach Bush, whose work I have been following for the past few years. Zach and Eva, welcome to the Gifts of Trauma podcast.
Thank you, Rosemary.
Good to be here with all of you.
It's a delight to have you both here. Is there anything you'd like to add, Jem, as we welcome these beautiful people to our show?
I just wanted to say, yes, we did intentionally have this as a 5-part series. And when we realized we had this beautiful opportunity to talk to Zach and Eva, we are giving our listeners a bonus episode. This is great on so many levels because we're actually able to so comprehensively now speak and close this concept of relating, because we've talked about people to people relating throughout this series. And now we get to bring in the more than human world, and also the things we don't necessarily think about or we take for granted, which is like what's going on inside of us, like our gut biome. And so let me just take a moment just to say, Zach, it's so amazing to have you here. We followed your work for many years, and it's such an honor to have you on the show as someone who's really presenced this incredible, comprehensive way of seeing our place in the world from the inside to the earth. So thank you. Thank you so much for being here. Eva, thank you for returning to the show. Just feeling a lot of gratitude right now.
I agree, 100%. Now, I'd like to introduce both of you. And while your full bios are in the show notes, I'd like to do this by sharing what I've identified as your consistent themes or through lines. So, Eva, I see you as the embodied witness. You hold a master's in spiritual psychology plus advanced degrees in international relations, politics, diplomacy, and law from the universities of Paris and Strasbourg. And as a credentialed expert, you weave together your lived experience, your systems expertise, your spirituality, your feminine wisdom, and your peace activation wisdom. And over the past 20 years, you've moved from legal and diplomatic work to addressing gender and conflict transformation on an institutional scale, to offering transformative training to those working in international conflict zones, to realizing there's no conflict where we're not emotionally involved. Losing your eyesight reconnected you with your divine feminine, moved you from doing to being, and unveiled the understanding that peace comes from forgiving ourselves for the misunderstanding that we're separate. So everything you teach comes from what you've lived, healing through feeling, not bypassing.
Thank you, Rosemary.
No, you're very welcome. Zach, I see you as the synthesizer. You're triple board certified in internal medicine, endocrinology, and hospice care. But unlike most medical doctors, you weave together hard science with systems thinking, spirituality, activism, and visionary teaching. And over the past 20 years, you've transitioned from treating individual cancer patients to realizing that cancer is cellular isolation, to understanding that soil degradation creates disease, to seeing that human nature separation is the root of disease, to now working on collective spontaneous remission through reconnection. So everything you've ever done has been about healing separation at a different scale. Is there anything you'd like to add to my very unconventional introduction? Eva?
No, I have nothing to add. I love the way you synthesize it, and it's really at the heart of everything I do, the wound of separation, to understand that we're all one. So thank you for reflecting that back.
You're so welcome. Zach, is there anything you'd like to add?
Grateful you didn't read my bio. That was very refreshing. Thank you very much for your stance on that, and I really appreciate the perspectives there. That was a really nice distillation of the last 30 years of my life, so thank you.
It's amazing how when we look back, we can see that it was all a path leading us to where we are now. What I'd like to get into is over the past 5 episodes, there have been some very consistent themes, some consistent through lines that emerged. And before I jump into those, I'm very curious to find out how the two of you connected and started working together. I sense there's a story there.
Go for it, Zach.
We met on a pretty extraordinary journey for sure, being part of the Earth One transatlantic experience that happened during the last U.S. election. So we spent 13 days transiting from the coast of Portugal through to the Caribbean on the same path that Christopher Columbus first moved on what would become the fated trip that would really begin the journey of the intense colonialism of Turtle Island, become United States, North America. And so we took that route and had on board some 40 or 60 wisdom lines from indigenous cultures around the world, but many representing both the North American First Nations and Native American groups, as well as South America and Mexico, etc. So we had really nice representation of peoples that have managed to keep intact their remembrance of the lines of human and being human before the colonial mechanism destroyed so much. And so it was interesting timing with the U.S. election in the middle of the trip. We were in one of the deepest parts of the Atlantic Ocean on the night of the election results. And it was very interesting to see the vast majority of the boat very convicted that there was going to be a specific outcome, and the outcome was the opposite of what was expected. And so to feel the grief of that group of people was very interesting to experience, and watching the ways in which trauma patterns unfold in complex systems, from indigenous wisdom to extreme wealth that were represented on the boat. 400 of us together, deep enough in the Atlantic where there's no out, there's no boat that's going to come get you, there's no helicopter that can fly far enough, there's no place for an airplane to land. And so you're in your highest state of isolation you've ever been in your life. You're in some ways the most insecure setting you've ever been in, and you're with 400 other people that you don't know. And so it was in this interesting container that Eva and I met and got a glimpse of each other's work, and seeds were planted that would then be harvested a year later as we came together to work in this new pathway for peace that we put together in Costa Rica together. Leaders that were also on the boat, including Putin Moodley from Earthrise Collective out of South Africa, and representing that wisdom line coming out of the deep apartheid wound and his lineage, slavery out of India. His lineage was slaves who moved to South Africa for the sugar cane trade. So we had this kind of collision of wisdom that came together on the boat that I think is still rippling out in its impact. That's been the blessing, of course, to stay open to the way in which that initial seeding wants to play itself out. Eva, anything else you want to add to that?
Actually, just the fact that I feel like we had similar paths in the parallel realities. And for me, it has been so interesting to listen to you, Zach, because I didn't know Zach before this trip, this book, and just like uncovering my own journey while I lost my eyesight and what was my inner experience on a cellular level, and listening to Zach articulating it. And I'm like, oh my God, this is exactly what I went through. And there's someone that is making sense of it. Because for me, while I was going through the journey, a lot of it was around like, why me? Why now? And now, 3 years later, I'm like, oh, okay, I get this. I actually needed to experience it in my body to be able to articulate it and embody it to others, to say there is a possibility, there's a way out. Even if we don't see it, we can still hold the vision from inside out. And so this retreat that we just held here was really like, how does Peace Activation's motto, which is like peace from the inside out, is actually being articulated by the wisdom from Zach's experience, really inside cellular memories, and how trauma is really embedded, not just from this lifetime, but intergenerational trauma. And I wrote about it also in one of the experiences that I went through personally on a personal level of womb trauma and my great-grandmother. And so for me, just like our work together complement each other so well. Just, oh, you don't get it from the way I explain it, listen to Zach. Or you don't get it from the way Zach is explaining it, listen it to me. And so I feel there's a lot of complementarity representing the same source of information.
Beautiful answer. And thank you, Eva, for answering the question that I hadn't had a chance to ask yet, because I was curious. It's like you met, you're collaborating. What exactly are you collaborating on? And you've just shared that beautifully. And it's something, Eva, that you say often, you've got to feel it. This came up so frequently through the other 5 episodes. Feeling everything is a prerequisite to healing. And there's no bypassing, no numbing, no escaping. And what occurred to me is I just went through something that I shared with Jem that inspired this question. Once we take the time, once we invest the time to feel what emerges as requiring our attention, is there something that shifts biologically? And this all came up because I was listening to a podcast yesterday where they were reporting from Gaza about everything that's happened there. And what hit me was, after listening to your last podcast from August on your podcast, Eva, it was just demonstrating so clearly that this polarization that happens, good, bad, and how can you not listen to report about the grievous harm inflicted on all things Palestinian and not go to the Israelis are the bad guys, the Palestinians are the good guys. There's like this instant polarization. And I'm wondering if there is the potential, if we sit in our grief and let what arises process the way nature intended it to, if there's a biological shift that happens in us that enables us to see those shades of gray that the polarization does not allow. So that's my question.
I should go, Eva. I think you got the answer there.
I was sensing into my body and I'm wondering, like, you're the biology doctor. I think for me is really, there's a certain contraction that happens in my body when I'm in a polarized space. Like I feel it in my body, like when something's energetically is happening. And I was just having a conversation with a friend of mine early on, and he's in Bethlehem and he's supporting a group of activists that are being kicked out of their home by settler. And he's like, I love you. And when you say get out of this victimhood mindset, like I get triggered because I'm just like with these people and they are like, there is a clear victim. What are you talking about? There's a clear victim and there's a clear perpetrator. So maybe we want to change the perpetrator role instead of keep focusing on the victim, changing their mindset. And my answer to that was, it's not either or, it's both and. I think there's certain dynamic. I feel like there's a certain adrenaline in our body that happens when we are in a fight or flight mode. And then so the polarization happened because we feel threatened. And he's just threatening my existence. I have to defend myself. And the only way I can defend myself is to kill you or to remove you. So I have to protect. So it comes from I'm protecting myself, hence I need to attack you. And this is where polarization happens. And so what peace activation is about is, what if there's a space in between before I jump into attacking you, where I feel this contraction and I bring your breath into that contraction and I sit with that feeling. That's the inner sitting. Is, oh my God, I so want to respond and attack you right now, but I'm going to take that inhale inside me and exhale and feel a spaciousness inside of me, inside, because it's not outside. Outside, I feel like everything is contracted. There's chaos, there's conflict, there's like a need and a request for me to answer immediately on the spot. But I'm going to take that time for me to breathe into that space. And I think there is something biologically that happened because my nervous system suddenly relaxes. I'm regulating myself before I regulate the other. And that's why it's inner peace before outer peace. There's something I'm doing that doesn't require much effort, actually. But it is to come back to me and it's come back to nature. And it's really a question I ask every single morning when I see the sun. And I'm like, you just shine up there. You're not expecting anybody to ask you to shine or to set. You're just there with the light. I'm here, you come, you see me, you don't see me. It's like I'm still here. And I feel that's what we're missing on the human level. Is we exist. It doesn't matter if Jem loves me or not. It doesn't matter if Zach is with me or not. It doesn't matter. I exist whether they want me or not. I exist whether Israel want to call me Palestinian or not. I exist. And it's this essence of existence, this essence, this loving essence that I want to transmit with peace activation. That this is what I'm inviting people to come to, that field beyond right doing and wrongdoing, this field where you exist and you have all legitimacy to exist without doing anything. I don't need you to do anything. I just need you to be. And so going back to the human being rather than the human doing. It's as if your mom doing something, I can live. I'm like, no, you actually live without doing anything. That's like your first rule.
I think I can just provide maybe the biologic corollary to the situation, which is this situation of cancer that I studied so much of. And I was developing chemotherapy at the University of Virginia as in my last part of kind of 17-year academic journey. And I had reached a point in my cognitive dissonance where I thought that the only pathway for a human to overcome cancer was to poison their entire body to a near-death experience so that hopefully the cancer dies before they do. And so that was basically the paradigm I was handed, and there was deep work done there. And my chemotherapy was an innovative form of vitamin A, so it was going to be a less toxic form of attack. And I was very excited about it. Moved from benchtop research to clinical trials in 3 years, which was this hyperspeed situation that something usually takes 20 years. And so it was very exciting. And I was caught up in the egoic savior mode of I'm going to save people from cancer. I'm going to win this war. And what I quickly learned over those coming years was that there is no saving a system that sees itself as its own enemy. And every cancer cell is an inherent part of every human body, and it is yourself. And when you are put into a war paradigm against yourself, you end up with a situation in which you will die at the same point, whether or not the cancer is present or not. And so that's what we saw in our chemotherapy trials and everything else is you could change the cause of death in about 15, 20% of people, which is enough to get your drug to market if you can change the cancer outcome. But what you never change is the death outcome. We call this all-cause mortality. And so when you try to be the savior and you move into this polarized state of the healthy cell against the cancer cell, and you come in as the savior with a poison that's going to weaken both of those elements, putting them both into a more desperate state, and see who can win the battle, it plays out exactly as it does in society, is that it's actually the savior that's perpetuating the pattern of the victim-perpetrator more so than the victim or the perpetrator. The savior is actually the one going in to poison the system and see who can survive or whose philosophy or psychology or resources hold out the longest to survive. And so the United States tends to play this savior role in our geopolitics globally, where we create a problem of poverty or schisms, and then we move in as the savior some years later. This is a geopolitical, I think, sophistication that came out of an empire that was already realizing the limitations of full out, just blatant wars empires had always done. And so the empire was coming to its end in the old form of warfare and needed a new model for perpetuating its own strength. And by moving into this altruism of the savior instead of the perpetrator, we got away with another 20 years of the empire. And so that the last 30 years maybe has really been built around this new savior complex and this savior model of, we're clearly not the ones that are having the problem. It's Venezuela's having the problem, or this issue over in Syria, it's the Syrians that have the problem, or it's Israel-Palestine that has the problem, or it's Ukraine-Russia that have the problem, and we're going to come and save the day. So we keep creating these situations, and I think the world will find out that we are basically functioning as the chemotherapy of the problem, where we're coming in to poison the entire system by creating polarization that's more severe, helping fuel the fire of the underpinnings of some of these chronic conflict zones. And so there's a deep reevaluation that we need to do as the United States, as a group of humans, rather than a government system. Do the humans of the United States of America want to continue to perpetuate the victim-perpetrator-saviour paradigm to the death of more people and the destruction of more ecology and environment as we wage war, not just on peoples, but against nature itself, with our current chemical warfare through agriculture and through our current medical systems? And so the biology of cancer in some ways is our perfect cellular micro version of what's unfolding at the societal level. And I think that's how I found myself into this desire for sociopolitical change. Is we've learned so much at the cellular level. We now know that you can't actually change the course of the person's life or their death moment unless you fundamentally change the relationship with themselves. They have to stop seeing the cancer as the enemy. They have to stop this polarization between it's my healthy breast cell against the cancer breast cell, and start to have to see the whole thing as a breast. And you have to welcome in the loneliness cell in the body, which is inherently the cancer cell, as you mentioned in the bio there. So that journey into realizing that cancer is not the enemy, it's just lonely. It's the most isolated cell within the body. If you start welcoming it back into the fold, it will eliminate all of its own cancer properties and will actually call in stem cells to lay down healthy breast tissue there. And so that breast of humanity right now is, I think, at the question, are we going to nurse ourselves into our own extinction, or are we going to nurse ourselves into a new birth and rebirth process here? And it's a very literal question that sits in front of us now as a species. Are we going to allow ourselves to continue to mire in the polarization of cancer cells in the form of geopolitics, or are we going to begin to nourish the cells back into the womb, if you will, nourish ourselves back into this rebirth opportunity that we have?
Wow. Thank you, Zach. What a beautiful answer. I actually am holding two questions right now. One is for Eva, because really what your answer demonstrated is that we need to take advantage of our biological distinction from other species.
Yes, thank you for that. And thank you, Zach, for the response. Really fitted well into what I sense. Love how you articulate things for us. I think what comes to mind is flexible response. I always speak about flexible identities, elasticity of identity. What happens in polarization is we get stuck in one identity. I'm Palestinian, you're Israeli, we're enemies. I'm this, you're that. Instead of seeing the polarity as two radically different human beings, we're seeing it as enemies because of the polarity. And so I think it's just like situational leadership, where you practice different type of leadership based on the situation that you're facing. It's exactly the same. It's based on the risk, based on where you are at, the context. I work with child soldiers and rebels in Africa. I wasn't just saying, if you breathe deep and create space inside of you, you're going to feel better tomorrow. You're going to get me up on the spot. So the way I would approach them, the language, the words I would be using would be different. And I think it's just the same as different languages that we have. We have such a diversity of language. It's exactly the same. Right now, speaking with you English, but I can speak 5 different languages. If you spoke Arabic, I will probably speak Arabic to you, or Hebrew, or any of the other. But if I speak Arabic while you're speaking English and you don't understand what I'm talking about, then it defeats the purpose. And it's exactly the same. If my response becomes a reaction, I lost my freedom. I lost my freedom because suddenly, instead of responding from my heart space or from my, what am I choosing to respond to what you're asking me, something else in me, and probably something biological, because it feels threatened. It feels literally threatened, and it's going to attack you and it's going to react to you. So I lost my freedom. My freedom stopped where I start react rather than coming from a centered place. And it happens. It's not like I'm not always in this centered place. And that's also okay. That's where flexibility is also part of the answer. It's some days, in Arabic, we say yom asan, yom basal. One day it's going to be honey and one day it's going to be onion. Don't expect all days to be honey and don't expect all day to be onion. Except that when you're in a honey day, you know that tomorrow might be onion and it's going to sting. And when you're in your onion day, you know that this is just a day and tomorrow might be honey. And I find like this wisdom of accepting, it's kind of natural wisdom. It's like accepting life as it is without getting stuck into what it means that is determinist.
Yeah. Beautifully said. Thank you. Zach, I want to shift back to your answer because as I was listening to you, my heart was literally expanding in my chest. It was receiving your words so well. And another major theme that's come up through all of this series is the drama triangle, which operates at all scales. So we've seen the victim-perpetrator-saviour pattern show up internally in the shame triangle in our episode on polyamory, in relationships in our episode on monogamy, in gender oppression when we spoke with people from the LGBTQ plus community, and in domestic violence now in geopolitics. Is this the pattern, like the pattern that operates at every scale of human relating?
Yeah, I think it's a unifying theme that runs through all human systems now. I think it's relatively new in human history. I don't think this is how it played out forever necessarily. I think that there's been some deep wounds that have happened in the psychology of our species that might be quite recent. We can see some patterns of empire rise and fall and some forms of conflict that date back 10,000 years maybe, but hard to find that 40,000 years ago. And we have some really good oral histories dating back that far. We have a 100,000-year oral history in the Khoi people of Africa. And it's very clear that there was not the same patterns of rise and fall. When there was conflict, it created change, but it didn't lead to genocides or eliminations of peoples in the same way, it seems. And so it may be a relatively recent phenomenon in the last 7,000 years or so that we had a universal wound occur. And a lot of the stories that are based out of the Israel-Palestine histories that unfold there out of the Abrahamic religions that came out really revolve around a period of time that likely was in response to this wound. So something happened around 5,000 years ago that really damaged our psyche, and the stories and the genetic lines that would survive that catastrophic event, which was maybe a global war, maybe something we can't imagine, but we don't have a good record or memory of what happened. And I've been all over the world with indigenous wisdom keepers with these lineages that date back 40,000 years in the Mayan traditions or in the Maori and our Aboriginal brothers and sisters in Australia. And there is no memory in there. Like there is a universal amnesia over what happened, but it's just clear that this victim-perpetrator-saviour pattern really set up in full. So there may have been some iteration of it in the past, but it really became a hallmark of human behavior in the last 5,000 years. And what has evolved from that is colonialism ultimately, which is the cancer-like symptom of abandonment. And so abandonment disorder is at the fundamental foundation of human behavior. In our improving sciences around addiction, we find out that addiction is the necessary and absolute reaction to abandonment disorder. So as you start to really take that in and take that information, you realize that okay, every human has to be addicted because we have a universal shared abandonment disorder. The abandonment is not from one another or one people from another, it's from our earth. We really deeply believe somewhere in there that nature is against us. And so we have built political systems this way. We have built, certainly in my medical system this way, that we think nature is attacking us. So there's bacteria that are attacking us, viruses that are attacking us, cancer is attacking us. All of this disease is pushing in to kill a healthy body. which is absolutely not true. We already know the science is completely opposite of that, but we can't get ourselves in right relationship to our own science because we're so stuck in the belief that we got abandoned by nature and we're against nature. You can go all the way to the English dictionary to find the Oxford English Dictionary to find nature has everything in the firmament of the earth, including minerals, plants, animals, as opposed to humans or anything humans have made. So not only are we outside of nature, we're in opposition to nature in our very definition of the word. And so it's that deep psyche playing out in our sociopolitics, our medical systems, our industries of energy systems, and our extraction. So when you develop abandonment, you get addiction. When addiction, there's not enough. You're in this scarcity mentality. And there's not enough. You have to develop a sociopolitical system of colonialism. You have to start to make sure you're taking from elsewhere because there's not enough that you can produce. That is exactly what happens inside of a cancer cell. The cancer cell, before becoming cancer, has damage to its own energy system, mitochondria, which are small bacteria that live inside of the human. And so you've got 14 quadrillion of these organisms fueling a human body into its light force. It takes an enormous amount of concentration of light to get life to occur, 10,000 times brighter than a sun. And so you're at this huge concentration of energy to create life. Human life is the most complex, interconnected ecosystem of any other biologic life form on Earth. And so we are the most concentrated energetic system. And then we go through this abandonment disorder. And at the cellular level, that looks like mitochondria starting to not be able to make enough energy for its own microenvironment. And at the same time, not enough energy to maintain the fiber optic cables that move resources between cells in this gifting economy that is life. And so it is the loss of connectivity and sharing that occurs from a loss of internal production of energy. And so in the same way that you lose autonomy or energetic production and you lose communication to your surroundings, you now become a cancer cell. And so the same thing is what colonialism creates. My ancestors came to what is now the United States 400 years ago and landing on the coast of a continent that had infinite testing, more resources than Europe had. Europe had already depleted its entire natural system and it had shattered its soil systems, its wildlife, everything else was already gone for 1,000 years. So they get to North America and it's just like this bountiful place. And the very first thing that my ancestors did was to put up a giant fence and wall themselves into a prison on a continent that had never had a fence before. And it was providing for 100 million peoples in 650 different nations for 40,000 years. And the very first thing is colonialism comes in and puts up a fence. And in that moment, they guaranteed their own death, their own disease and everything else. And they would die over the next 3 years. And so ships had to keep coming in and they had to keep building bigger and bigger fences. Pretty soon they realized that they needed to go and just start killing everything else out there so that they could maintain a large enough area to suck energy from to maintain the cancer that was Europe by that time. And so the failure of communication, the failure of energy production within the system, it was becoming cancerous on the planet. And so my ancestors were a metastatic expression of colonialism. So this metastases moves across the ocean and sets up a cancer on the coast of Virginia that then spreads across the continent, wipes out 97% of the diversity, both at the human level and at the biodiversity and biology level over the next couple hundred years. So the cancer has fully played itself out in the United States. And so now we have metastases all over the world, set in by the last 50 years of over 75 wars that have been seeded from my country. And so you've got these metastatic behaviors moving out to pull more energy in. We just kidnapped the leader of a sovereign nation and brought him to the United States. And under the altruistic patina of savior again, we just saved Venezuela for the cost of all of their oil. And so we are taking energy from them because there's not enough in the United States. U.S. actually produces more oil than any other country in the world, including Saudi. And it's a large lead. And it is already producing so much oil, way more than we need. We've got these huge oil reserves in place. And yet here we are thinking we don't have enough because the US dollar is so weak. We need to do something to support that. So we're really playing out this cancer story at the penultimate level as the United States right now. And if there's a cancer in the world, it's the belief that there's not enough within the United States to support a lifestyle or an economy that the whole world depends on now. And in some ways, we're too big to fail. And so we every economy of the world somehow now codependent on this American imperialism, which allows us to get away with an incredible amount of just blatant behavior. And that blatant behavior is really playing out in such a way that we need to reconsider our right relationship. How do we move from polarization back to polarity? And so I would offer you guys that as maybe a next question for your group. As you consider this polarization as the problem, what's the difference between polarization and polarity? Polarity, I would offer at the chemistry level, is played out nicely by sodium and chloride. Sodium is actually a very difficult element for any system to utilize and maintain as a single element. Chloride is very toxic to any biologic system in its own form. But if they come together, sodium and chloride being opposites, hold an incredible polarity that then creates salt that makes life possible. So polarity is the third law of natural law. First one is sovereignty. Second one is law of attraction. Third one is polarity. And so polarity is the result of sovereignty and the law of attraction. And so we will always attract to us our opposite. Israel will always attract Palestine, etc., when they're in their sovereign states. And they can move not physically or geographically, they can move in their psychology and chemistry to become polarity to one another rather than polarized. And that's the two-party system in the United States, Democrats, Republicans, same story. We became polarized, therefore we have no life. We are draining life out of the system. If we recognize the opportunity for polarity, we solve the whole crisis once again. So it's the Ubuntu concept there in Africa. I am because you are. And until sodium witnesses chloride, it doesn't know its role within a life system, within a living system. So this is where we can make these fundamental radical changes without really changing our own behavior or our own identities. In fact, embracing our own identity will be our move to polarity.
Wow.
It's the opposite of one world government, one world peace, one world thing. So that's where we're at.
Thank you. Thank you. My mind is flooded with images of the metaphors you shared. I think of it here when I first moved to Costa Rica a year and a half ago. I had a Tico driver getting me to where I am from the airport, and he pointed out the compounds on the hills, and you got these houses with big walls around them. Oh, the Americans live there. They like the walls. So not much has changed in the last 400 years. And I'm also seeing this lonely cancer cell as the shunned child in the schoolyard that no one is playing with. And you've painted some very beautiful pictures. And I wonder if, Eva, you would like to take the ball now, because as we ended that beautiful answer with polarity, I've heard many prophecies, transmissions from others that suggest this is the tipping point where the divine masculine and feminine are coming together, where we are, as a result of that unification, going to be able to reconnect more fully with nature. I wonder what your thoughts are on that.
It's so interesting. I was just reflecting exactly on that, on my own relationship with my partner, Fabrice, because we couldn't be more different. And Zach has just experienced us in the week retreat in Costa Rica. We are two very polarity, like you think polarity, you think Eva and Fabrice, because like how on earth can you guys be together for 17 years, have two kids and still love each other and do life? And I think it's really deep inner work for sure, individual, but also a deep understanding of we're radically different. And it's this difference that is the richness. It's the space in between. And I've spoke about it a lot on the relationship. We don't believe we are in a relationship. We believe we are in a relationship. We're shifting constantly to the next version of us, individually and together. And we have at home, one of our biggest mantras is don't commit to me, commit to evolving and I'll meet you there. And so every time one of us has evolved, or whatever we want to call that, or healed an aspect of itself, and the other person is not there yet and is triggered and is angry and is, I don't know what's happening inside, we trust the process that she or he will get there. I just need to keep evolving because he or she, it's either me or him, we're going to meet there. And it's been tough. We were like, how do you guys do that? I'm like, it's work. It's work. We need to drop the idea or the illusion that they fall in love and they live happily ever after. It doesn't happen this way. They meet, in a nuclear bombing of explosion, which is what happened to us, because we met on a dance floor in Burning Man. There's no way we would be together if we didn't meet on a dance floor in Burning Man. This wouldn't have happened. I was working in a peacekeeping mission in Ivory Coast. He was teaching yoga and doing massage in Topanga, California. No way. Our world was so opposite and two polarities. Yet we met in that specific moment, and there was the explosion. There was the knowingness of, oh, twin flame encounter. And that was like in 2008. And since then, it's just been like one experience after the other, challenging us to stay together or run away. And we've been doing that. We've been running away and coming back, running away and coming back. Oh my God, we're pregnant. Okay, what do we do with that? Working for the UN in New York. No, then I have a vision. Let's go to Costa Rica. Oh, Costa Rica. What would we do there? Like we kept challenging each other and pushing each other to our edges. Like me finding myself when I met Fabrice, I had no clue. Nature was, going back to what you shared, that nature for me at the time was the enemy because I was working in Africa. Nature is where the rebel hide and where they jump out and attack. And so you're not going to walk in nature barefoot and love and hug a tree. Definitely not. And so for me to come to Costa Rica and suddenly encounter this type of nature, abundant nature, feminine nature, welcoming nature, where nobody's hiding, and like my trauma response, like the programming of my own life, having grown up in Israel as Palestinian and then working in conflicts. And I worked in one of the craziest places in Rwanda, Burundi, Congo. And I wouldn't go, like I wouldn't even imagine considering nature as a mother or as a place of refuge. And so this invitation from him pushed me to my edge. And then in my own way, I pushed him to his edge. And so it's just like constantly, where is this wounded masculine that want to attack this feminine, or this wounded feminine that doesn't want to listen to that masculine? Where do I meet that wound in honor and then still step up to the divine in me and divine in him? Not by me telling him how to get to the divine. Of Karen Mace once said, these women are constantly like waiting for the king. For God's sake, stop waiting for the king, be a queen. And I feel like it's really the work that we each need to do on our own selves to be able to meet the other. If I want to meet the divine in the other, I need to meet the divine in me. And we go back. It's still the same answer for a different question. It's all started on a cellular level, on a biological level, because you look at nature, nobody in nature, like no tree is going to say, and this is really an example I keep always in my mind when I look at the bamboo and I look at an oak tree. None of them are going to say, oh, look at you, you're so weak. Look at me. Like there's no comparison or competition. There's I am, you are, and there's a space in between us. And in that space between us, there's so much creativity, and that's the creation. When the divine feminine and the embodied feminine and the divine masculine and the embodied masculine come back in that relationship, shifting my relationship to me, shifting my relationship to you, and shifting my relationship to the space in between. It's all happening in the in-between. It's not happening, the polarity is there, but everything is happening is in the in-between of these polarities.
Yeah, that's beautifully expressed. Thank you, Eva. It's interesting. The language is different, but Gabor Mate has shared a lot about his relationship with his wife and not using the divine framework or the king-queen framework. You can see just through the stories that have been shared, that's exactly what's going on with the two of them after well over 50 years together. It's the sort of spiral growth. It's amazing. Thank you so much. I'm wanting to shift a little bit here. Another topic that came up very consistently through all 5 episodes was shame. And I believe this may be a quote from the August episode Eva, you and Zach shared, which is shame is the universal poison. It's the emotional manifestation of the separation wound. And in our series so far, we've explored shame in sexuality and relationships, in gender identity, in violence. So collective shame, guilt, and fear, you've said it stabilizes the victim-perpetrator-saviour cycle. Is shame the emotional signature of all separation, of the separation wound?
But I feel like you probably have some really good direct stuff to share there, so feel free to jump in. But what's coming through for me right now is the difference between guilt and shame is a level of emotional trauma. One is a reaction and the other is a perpetration. Same frequency maybe, or very similar frequency to guilt and shame, but one is caused by the receiving. The guilt is something you receive. Shame is something you project. And so one is a wound, one is a weapon. And I think the two go so closely hand in hand at the biologic level. The Chinese over the last 4,000 years have worked out exactly where each emotion is stored in the human body to create disease. And so the overlap between guilt and shame in the biology is very similar. And so you're going to find that spleen, which is going to express a lot of the bloodborne and bone cancers kind of things, as well as something like the gallbladder, liver axis there. Right? And so you see these emotions of guilt and shame playing very similarly at the geologic levels of the emotional body, if you will. And so that's one interesting piece of the puzzle, that they probably have full polarity to each other as well. And where you find guilt, you're going to have to find shame because of that victim-perpetrator flip of the coin. As soon as somebody feels guilty, they're going to have to flip shame around to stay in balance in some way so that they don't drown in the guilt. The way in which we tend to drown in guilt, again, is addiction. So our choice is either perpetuate our own victimization through addiction or hold our ground and switch the direction of guilt to shame as a weapon. And there was a prophecy that came through in 2010 or something like that ended up getting published in this book, or the Pleiadian Prophecy 2020, I think it was called, or something like that. But it had an interesting prediction that humans would lose the genetics of fear, guilt, and shame between the years of 2017 and 2027. And it's the first time I had ever read the sentence of lose gene to an emotion. And it has really set me on a little bit of a different path that's maybe taking me to a very much different destination in my own life and in my science, of understanding that these things that we call by words that sound like they're describing the emotional body are very much expressed in the physical genetic body. And so when we look at a pattern of Ukraine and its thousands of years of Eastern European conflict, or Israel-Palestine, or any of these examples, it's likely that we're talking about genetics, actual genes that have been activated in the human that is perpetuating the behavior at the physical level. And that's important to understand, because we tend to put so much weight on the emotional body that we forget about the physical. And so this event that Eva and I did together with our colleagues in Costa Rica, the vast majority of that day starts at 6:30 in the morning and runs till 9:30 at night, where you're moving the physical body. It is not a philosophical framework for peace. It's not a peace process where we're going to all address our own victimhood environment. It's literally a physical activation of the body, getting it into a higher frequency, a higher light energy per cubic centimeter than it's been in its entire adult life. So we got 50 people vibrating in a frequency that they had literally never gotten to as an adult physiology before, to activate their genetics, to activate their epigenetics, to activate the water structure inside their cells, to see if we could supersede the behavior of the genetics. And that's what I think we got to witness in each of ourselves in that week together, is we all walked out of there with a different framework to work with, because our biology had changed. Therefore, our ability to transmute the trauma was no longer the same painful, suffering process that it may have been before. And so this is where I believe the future for a human race is going to lie, as we need to move out of our genetic expression of our ancestry and move into an energetic transformation. The genetic expression of our ancestors is entirely trauma. It is the victim-perpetrator-saviour pattern of behavior, but it's really in the genetics of fear, guilt, and shame that we live. As long as we keep telling each other stories of, you are Palestinian, I'm Israeli, I'm American, we're going to be living out the genetic expression of these seemingly emotional states that are actually physical states that then are easily co-opted by emotional experiences. And so my genetics activated with fear, guilt, and shame genes is always looking for a story that then justifies the reason my biology is playing that out. Cancer inside my body, autoimmune disease, my own immune system seeing myself as the enemy, plays out on all these different allergy. I can't breathe the air of Mother Earth. I can't eat the food, everything. And so you're literally reaching a place where Mother Earth can no longer sustain humans because of this level of polarity that is playing out as polarization instead of balance. And then that polarization, we are creating this intense schism of realities. And so there's a way for us to begin to relax into possibility that there's an energetic memory that lies deeper than our genetic history. Energetic memory is held in the water, not in the genes. And so if you just let that settle in for a minute, let me repeat it for you and just feel this in your body instead of think about it. Feel this. You have a memory inside of you that is energetic and it is held within your water. The water is determining the shape of your DNA that is holding the genetic memory of your ancestors. And so my invitation to you and myself is, can we let go of our ancestry for a moment? Can we let go of the genetic expression of 40 generations of trauma that's pounding on your doors right now, creating the cacophony of chaos in your mind, heart, and soul? Can you let go of that for a moment and just give the space that Eva was encouraging us to take the breath and now feel your water? Feel this deep ocean of memory. It is a saline solution. It is a literal ocean inside of you that remembers the original imprint of our birthright. What does it actually mean to be human? To be human is to be the greatest imagination of Mother Nature, a vessel that will contain more biodiversity and interconnected intelligence than any other species will hold. The genomic sequencing of the human now shows that we hold more biodiversity than any other mammal. The colon of the human is uniquely designed anatomically to hold more of Mother Earth than any other container she's designed so far. And so to be a human is to hold Mother Earth in an interconnected environment where your wisdom and your truth comes pouring out as the trees speak through you, as the rivers speak through you, as the oceans speak through you. Remember from your water, not from your genetics. Remember from your water, not from your ancestors, and find out in that water that your ancestors are not some past thing. They are present right. All souls are present right now. There is only time in the human construct of separation from nature. So let's let go of the trauma. Let's let go of time, allow our ancestors to become present and have an energetic upgrade to our memory through the water of the original human design. And then this whole story, the victim-perpetrator-saviour, goes into polarity. We don't need to demonize or judge the triad. The triad got us to where we are. And now we're here. And now we can recognize that there's a polarity that requires no damnation and no judgment towards the victim-perpetrator-saviour epoch. We did that. As a humanity, we did that. For 5,000, 7,000, or 70,000 years, we did that. It got us to our current moment that there's so much density in the triad that we should not actually reject it. We should use that. If we now utilize that to create a gravitational relationship with polarity of the new human, which is in the creator mode. So when we shift out of savior to creator, we no longer need the victim and perpetrator to rationalize our self-worth. Right now, the savior has to find another victim perpetrator to perpetuate its belief that it is the savior. When you move to creator, you no longer need the victim perpetrator. And so you will no longer create systems of wealth and military imbalance to perpetuate these patterns. When we move to creator, we will be in polarity to the whole history of humankind, and then our ancestry within us and around us in our presencing of them become the energy by which we move into this new expression energetically. But if we just damn it and bury the victim perpetrator, we just lost all of the energetic potential for our new polarity. And so we need to witness our last epoch as important in ways we cannot imagine to this new biology that is coming out of an energetic up-leveling rather than a genetic re-expression.
Thank you so much. Wow. I'm going to have to listen to that again. That was so inspiring. It's interesting. Someone I follow, Pam Gregory, was advising that we should bless our water. And thank you for flipping that around and suggesting that we allow our water to bless us. Jem has a question.
We're taking a brief pause to share what's on offer in the Compassionate Inquiry community. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
If you're not a therapist or a healer, but you heard our guest describe the personal transformations they experienced during their compassionate inquiry journeys and wonder, what might that be like for me? There is a program that is offered to anyone who wants to experience the power of Gabor Mate's approach to trauma healing. I'm Kevin Young, and I've been facilitating CI circles since 2022. I've seen people transform in many ways. I've seen people change beliefs, relationships. I've seen people change how they show up in the world. I have seen people literally change how they look in front of my very eyes. There are many, many ways that people change during Compassionate Inquiry Circles. Circles is a 10-week small group experience, and registrations are opened until January 26th. Click the link in the show notes. That'll bring you to a web page that gives you all you'll need to figure out if this is for you.
That's beautiful. I love Zach's invitation to use the density of the triangle. I have a question, but first I want to just let my body speak for a moment, having received what you just laid out there, Zach. And I want to say, I can feel my heart breathe. I can feel so much sensation in my body, and that helps me presence. We're having a conversation within the Compassionate Inquiry podcast, and my training in compassionate inquiry, one of the most important things that it provided for me was awareness to the constrictions in my body. I became very aware that when I could be present to constriction in my body, that was really usually the root of my victim state, my perpetrator state. There was something holding, something tightening. And I also have thought that constriction is at the root of disease, like when we hold our bodies, when we hold our breath. So when I invited myself into what you were opening, I felt my body completely relax. And so throughout this conversation, I've been thinking about constriction, and I'm really curious from both of you if you would say a couple words about what is up with the constriction, the biomechanics of constriction in the body. Because I feel when there's constriction, there's a separation. There's the tightening that's going to keep me from embracing and being curious about what is cancer. My mother was just diagnosed in this last month with breast cancer. And strangely, it's a very conflicted, difficult relationship. There's been more love flowing between us than ever before. And I've been thinking about, wow, what if love is the thing that we just need to, like, because that's what we learn in compassionate inquiry. It's about loving the exiled part. So I've been thinking about, I'm going to love that cancer in her breast, that little black particle I saw them extract. I'm going to love it. I just want to weave all that before you and bring it back to a very practical for our audience way that we can be with what you're offering, and like to think about like when constriction visits our bodies, what is it doing?
Yeah, I think one of the challenges of the human experience right now is that we have been for so long handed modality of understanding the world of good and evil, good and bad. And I think it's very much been perpetuated and perhaps reached its pinnacle of expression in this new movement of consciousness, conscious communities, conscious activations, conscious things, conscious groups. And so since the late 60s with this kind of dawning of Aquarius kind of energy to it, and we were started to be handed these hierarchical pictures of down here is spiritual and shape, up here is enlightenment, love and joy are right in here. You want to work your way up that ladder. If you're still down here in fear, guilt, and shame, then you're really a low functioning thing. But if you can be up here in joy, then you're reaching, oh, look at that. You're almost at enlightenment. Just keep going. And so by creating this belief that one is low and one is high, one is bad and one is good, one is evolved, one is not, we couldn't move forward. We've literally paralyzed ourselves with those hierarchical models. And what we need to flip it on its side and recognize that they're just different frequencies. Just like on the rainbow, nobody has decided that red is actually better than violet. They just are on opposite ends of the spectrum. And when we flip the frequencies of all of the feelings and emotional and felt experiences that a human can have are in a continuum that is horizontal instead of some sort of vertical hierarchy, we can start to say, are you feeling something? Yes. Wonderful. You're being human. You are so unique because of your collective rejection from nature that you are able to feel things that no other species will feel. The oak tree has never once woken up thinking it was a really crappy oak tree yesterday. The carrot has never come out of the ground being like, oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed that I'm out of the ground. Look, I'm small. Yeah, if you just left me for 3 days, I would have been a better carrot. I'm so ashamed of my current carrotness. Like, it just does not occur in this other species. There's no elephant that wakes up and been like, geez, I'm so overweight. I wish I was that gazelle. I really would be much better if I was a gazelle. No, it's a freaking elephant, and it knows the essence of elephants so well. And so these other species will not get the opportunity to feel the fear, guilt, and shame like you can. We are contributing something radically important to the felt universe right now by our capacity to go from red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet. We can do the entire rainbow of the felt spectrum. And this is where your question around constriction really comes. In the same way that it seems like constriction must be bad and expansion must be good, the fact is you cannot have the one without the other. They are in perfect polarity. You will never expand to your next potential of feeling the entire breadth of the human experience until you've gone through a period of constriction. And if you're not willing to constrict, you will not concentrate enough energy to up-level your experience. And that up-leveling is not a movement for enlightenment. If you wanted to be enlightened, you just would have skipped the human thing. You would have stayed as soul connected to everything in singularity. You signed up to be human so that you could have the finite experience of separation so that you could suffer. You came here to suffer. Did you lose a child? Did you kill somebody? Did somebody kill you? Did somebody kill your child? You came here for this level of suffering. No other species is doing this to each other. The lion has never murdered something. The lion is practicing this polarity of predation. The predator and prey is a long polarity played out. And we know that every time that polarity happens in nature, there's more biodiversity, more interconnected intelligence, more life. You put any keystone species back in place and it's, oh, now the lion is killing things. We should get the lions out of there, all those poor gazelles. Life disappears. You put the keystone species back, the wolf in Yellowstone, the elephant, the lion, the beaver, put these species back in play. Life explodes. So nature is showing us over and over again that it is for the constriction of something that we would call death, that we reach the expansion of life and that rebirth process. And so the constriction that you're feeling right now is because you just heard something, and I have no idea what was heard in the last hour that did it, but something suddenly lets you know that you had the opportunity to jump to a new level of aperture experience. You could open the aperture wide, but to get there, you're going to close the aperture for a second, compress all of the energy so it's ready to do this next birth. And that's how physics works. To get a nuclear reaction to happen, you have to do fusion before you can do fission. You have to press them together under such intense pressure, and then you can release the energy and you get nuclear energy. And so there's a necessary thing to fear, guilt, and shame, just as there's a necessary part to constriction. There's a radically important role in death, just as there is in rebirth.
Oh my God, I love you, Zach. Yeah, it brought me back to where we met. And we were on this boat, like amazing. During this whole trip, I was in a whale belly, literally. That was my visions. That was my experience. It was just like we were on this living body of water. And I was seeing how we were still constricted, thinking that we're separate from this water. Because ultimately, guilt, shame, fear, all of these emotions are actually frequencies. It's what frequency am I tapping into? And how am I connecting that frequency into the water that are living in my body? So I am a body of water. My body is composed of water, and I'm on this body of water that can reflect back to me. And if I'm in the right frequency, I can listen and I can really dialogue with that body of water that is outside of me and that is within me, and is the representation of all of these emotions where I feel like I'm separated. And going back to the wound of separation, I feel separated not only from nature, from the divine. I feel like I'm not worthy of being. And that's why there's like the shame and the guilt, and am I enough? Am I not enough? And I feel like this also brings me back to what Zach is ending with, this fusion. Because if you look at even human men and women's interaction, the first falling in love, we're falling into love. We're falling into this fusion and codependency. And oh my God, like I found the one person, one woman, one man of my life, woman of my life. And we're in this fusion, codependency. And then, oh my God, I can't anymore. And you have this independence and coming out, don't talk to me, and I don't want that. And that's where mostly divorce happen, unfortunately. But if you stick during this harsh moment of, oh my God, I can't anymore, then you come back to the interdependence. Oh, I can be with you and still be me. I don't need to lose myself into you. And I think that's really the human experience. It's this fusion and coming into the polarity, and then finding again the space in between these two polarities, this masculine and feminine. It's like the same, like we say that my dad used to say that, Eid wahda b'dza'ifish, one, we cannot clap our hand with only one hand, the two. But the two are not similar. And you can see that. And we have in Arabic, we say we have the 18 number names of God on one hand, the left, and 81 on the other hand. And together they're 99. And so I feel like this is really everything in nature is reflected in us. We are part of nature. Nature is part of us, and there's no separation. And so this experience that we are going through right now, and I think we are coming to its end, because that's what I saw. I had to lose my vision. I had to go through this darkness. I wouldn't have understood what I understood now, what I communicate now, if I didn't lose my eyesight. And if I didn't go through this experience where I was ripped out open, but also understanding that, oh my God, exactly what Zach said, we actually came here to experience that. We actually came here to experience this darkness. So us seeking the light is doesn't make sense. We're coming from the light. We're coming as a being of light. We are a being of light. There's nothing we need to do about it. What we need to do is just go experience darkness. How does darkness look like? And one of the things that I also shared with Zach during our retreat is how relaxing it was for me to be in the darkness, how relaxing it was to not see and not constantly be in this judgment. What is this? This is beautiful. This is not beautiful. This is good. This is bad. This is constantly evaluating and finding solace in, oh, I don't see. And in my book, I speak about it, Dancing in the Dark, because dancing in the dark was really suddenly became this motto of while I was going through the experience, I felt I don't have enough space. I felt depressed. I felt I'm not loved. I'm not worthy. I'm not this. I'm not that. And then when I regained my eyesight, and it was literally a physical experience of dancing where I was afraid to dance. And then when I went back to that same place, I saw, oh my God, there was so much space around me, but I was afraid to dance. I was afraid to fall because I couldn't see how much space there is around me. And that's how we live life. We live life not realizing how much space there is around us because we're afraid to open our eyes and see and feel how much we're loved and supported, how much we're worthy, how much nature needs us to enjoy what it's providing us around. And we are part of it. And so for me, it's really became this motto of we are in the dark. We're going through dark moment. But we were born to go through this dark moment because we have the elixir. And this elixir is inside of us. And it is inside in our heart. And we need to bring it into our, the shame, fear, and guilt. These are all the three chakras underneath the heart. These are the guts. These are all the stomach, all the food, everything that we don't digest. This is where we want to bring our heart. Not to bring our heart up. It's to bring our heart down. love this earth, love this mud, like the lotus, which is the symbol of peace activation. It's the logo of peace activation. People are like, oh, what a beautiful photo. I'm like, no, the lotus is because of the mud. That's why it's the symbol of peace activation. Because this beautiful flower is birthing in the mud. And right now we went through the mud, all that we're going through. If we're able to tap into that, we need to bring this exile part you're talking about, this contraction, this cancer. We need to bring them lovingly and without denial, because love, like what is the spiritual bypass? Spiritual bypass is loving with denial. The invitation is, can I love without denying what's happening right now in Palestine? Can I still be present with what's happening right now in Venezuela? Can I still keep my eyes wide open while looking at this darkness? Yes, it is darkness. Yes. And I am working my way through to contribute my part. We're each contributing our part, our piece to peace. And that's the beauty of the collaboration with Zach, is this, it's a novel path for peace, because it's really novel. Nobody even talk about this. Everybody do peace agreements and let's negotiate and let's do dialogue work. And nobody's, no, come work through your shit, through your own biology. And let's see how you come out. You're sovereign, not by any other story. And if you're coming to me as a victim, there's nothing I can give you, because you're so attached and addicted to your story as a victim or as a perpetrator or as a savior that not much I can do for you. But if you're willing to step into sovereignty, if you're willing to step into understanding this polarity, then we can fly high together. And we co-create this novel path to peace. And peace activation is all about that. Is people are like, you should change your name of the organization. Nobody loves peace now. Peace is a bad word in Palestine, Israel. Everybody triggered by peace. I'm like, yeah, that's why it's activation. That's why activation comes with peace, because we are activating peace that is already here. We're not creating anything new. We're just activating what is already here. We're activating the biology that is already here. We're activating nature as it is. We're not bringing anything new. We're not inventing anything new. We're just simply being activator. And by us being activator, we can activate each other and the field, because the field is here. The field has never not been here. Something happened somewhere and created a genetic. Now we need to go back to the energetic and understand that the energetic is the frequency. And that frequency of peace is a frequency that we don't know how to experience it, how to rest in it. And that's the invitation. Can I find that peace inside of me and stay with it? Stay in that frequency of peace, regardless of what anybody says.
Thank you, Eva. Oh my goodness, what a way to end this episode. I can't believe it. We're out of time. Zach, I know you need to run. Thank you so much for blessing us with your presence today. It's been wonderful.
So great to be with all of you. Thank you, Eva. Thank you each for contributing to this compression state that humanity is currently in, and honoring the compression of this moment of human, and excited for the expansion and rebirth of the planet as well as our humanity. It's a prayer that the only thing that goes extinct here is our inhumanity. So.
Zach Bush, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Zach.
Eva Dalak, thank you so much for joining us. Bring such a bright, shining light to our conversations. It's truly a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Rosemary. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you, Eva. Thank you, Zach.
The Gifts of Trauma is a weekly podcast that features personal stories of trauma healing, transformation, and the gifts revealed on the path to authenticity. Listen on Apple, Spotify, all podcast platforms. Rate, review, and share it with your clients, colleagues, and family. Subscribe and you won't miss an episode. Please note, this podcast is for informational purposes only. It is not a substitute for personal therapy or a DIY formula for self-therapy.